I like to tell my students, and I tell myself this all the time, that it's important to be able to sing the music that we need to play. That's especially true for a cantabile passage like bars 13 through 28. So, I thought like, okay, as I was working on this piece, I thought, okay, I want to be able to sing this. I want to know how it goes. And then I tried singing it, and man, I had a really hard time singing this. The reason I had a hard time singing bars 13 through 28 is that it's not especially tonal. It doesn't have a really strong home note that the whole passage revolves around. And generally speaking, the way that human beings understand music, the way we hear music and enjoy music, we understand music and enjoy music because we notice music as a series of relationships. And one of the primary relationships is that all the notes relate back to a home note, and we usually call that home note tonic. The home note, like the home note of the key, like if you're playing the Hindemith's symphony in B flat is the home note of that symphony. This piece doesn't really have a home note for the whole thing. So if I'm going to make sense of it for myself and get to the point where I can sing this cantabile section, I have to find shorter sections that I can sort of comprehend one at a time. What I do first is the first 4 bars, 13 through 16, in my mind, I think of that as being in G flat major. Now that's open to interpretation, but that's the way that I thought of it. The reason I did that is because the first 3 notes are, it's an inverted form of the G flat major chord. G flat major chord, G flat, B flat, D flat. If we invert that, we get B flat, D flat, G flat. So to my ear, that really strongly establishes the key of G flat. So what I do, and I wish I could go through a really detailed explanation of this, but there just isn't time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the main tonal centers that I picked out, helping me learn to sing this passage a few bars at a time. So for the first 4 bars, I chose G flat major. I thought to myself, okay, all the notes are going to revolve around this note, and I'm going to use solfege syllables to help me with that. You can ask your band director about solfege syllables or talk to your private teacher about them. Mi, sol, do, re, la, ti, do, re, la, ti, sol, fi. That last note, fi, doesn't belong in the key of G flat major, but what it's doing is, in my mind, it's functioning as a bridge to the next key, which is going to be G major, because there we have an inverted G major chord. So we basically, our tonal center has gone up a half step. So for the next 4 bars, 17 through 20, I think of G as being the home note. So now starting on my B natural, mi, sol, do, re, la, ti, do, re, mi, re. Then for 2 bars, I think of it as switching to C minor. So C becomes the new home note. Sol, do, re, fa, mi. Right, so that was a very, very brief tonal center around C minor. And then, in my interpretation, A flat major becomes the new tonal center. Sol, do, re, fa, mi. And then it quickly changes to E flat major. Fa, sol, la, sol, re, fa, mi, ti. And then it goes to C minor. Fa, me, re, do, do. So that was a really rushed version of how I learned how to sing this passage. What I did was, to keep my brain from being too confused, to give my brain something to latch onto, I made sure that I could identify a tonal center, a home note for each little section, and then I knew that all my notes would relate back to that. If you use the system of solfege that I use, it's called movable do. Do, you use that syllable for whatever the home note is, for whatever feels like the home note. And so that's the system that I used. And if you break your music down into those short sections, believe it or not, in the long run, it's going to help you learn this faster. Because if you just went through note by note and tried to learn it all, whatever that is, all 20 bars all at once, then that's going to take you a long time because your brain's not going to have a lot to latch onto as far as a home base. But if you give yourself a home base for every few bars, then your brain will have something to latch onto. You can learn those 4 bars and then jump to the next, whatever, 4 bars and then 2 bars and then a bar and 2 beats. Wherever you can identify a brief tonal center to give your brain a home note, something it can relate back to, it's going to give you the ability to learn those short passages. And then once you've got those learned, you can sort of hook those passages together like rail cars getting hooked up on a long train. So I hope that's helpful to you. The reason why I went through all that is that ultimately I want you to be able to sing this cantabile section so that when you play it, you're going to already know where the pitches go and you'll have a sense of what you want to do with the phrasing and the direction of the musical line. And if you do that, then you'll be fighting the stereotype of the unmusical tuba player. You want to be that musical tuba player who understands what he or she wants to do with the musical line and is able to sing the music, and when you play the music, ultimately you want it to sound like a beautiful flowing human voice.